Hello there, and welcome to the Intellectual Tea Party Podcast. Today will be episode 4. My name is Tanner. I'm your host, as always. I'll be flying solo again today, so we'll have another abbreviated episode without a guest host. Today I'm going to talk about some of the latest news in film, TV culture, and I'm going to do a slight review of Ant-Man and the Wasp, and we will also talk about clickbait articles and that global terrorist attack that I am just up to my head in, and I just don't want to deal with it anymore, but it's a daily occurrence, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit just to get that off my chest. I've talked a little bit about that with Clay in the first episode of the podcast, but it's just a consistent issue, and we'll get to that later. So the big news in film this week is Episode 9 of Star Wars, a sequel to The Last Jedi, will have a appearance of one Lando Calrissian will be joining the fold again, played by Billy D. Williams, not the Donald Glover version, no, but the OG, Billy D. will be back, and of course it's very exciting. I mean, of course, it was kind of unexpected to me, but I mean, since Luke and Han are already dead in the franchise, and Carrie Fisher passed in real life, they want to have that nostalgia factor of bringing back an OG cast member. So I guess Billy D is the next one to go for. I mean, I'm sure had Carrie Fisher not passed away, I'm sure she would have been a very big part of this film. And they've said that before, that they intended on having her be a big role in Episode 9. But ultimately, I really don't think they know what they're doing. I think they're just kind of making it up going along. But, I mean, I don't know. I know a lot of people don't like the new trilogy, but I dig it. I'm sorry, I keep talking about Star Wars in like every episode of this podcast, but I'm sorry, news keeps coming out. Stuff to talk about keeps happening, and this is kind of a big deal, so I'm looking forward to that. But on the subject, it's like so many films are bringing back old actors. It's just like a niche. It's just a piece that you have to have a big box office. It's like the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom fiasco I talked about on the last podcast. That God, I hate that movie. I still hate it. Sorry, there's one other episode later. I still hate that movie. It's terrible. I've seen a lot of people post on it like, "Wow, it's amazing." I don't know, man. I don't know what you're seeing. I don't know if we saw the same movie, but Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom is a huge turd. And one of the biggest travesties of that film, which I already touched on in the last episode, but I mean, Jeff Goldblum is in that movie for like 45 seconds. He's literally in it for like less than a minute. It's insane. He was the focal point of the advertisement, so I got excited to see Dr. Ian Malcolm again, and it didn't happen. But I guess that's part of the ploy. That's what you need. You need the Harrison Ford. You need the Billy D. Williams. You need the Jeff Goldblum. You need to have a niche person come in that will drive you. The older audience will come in and have interest in you if you have an actor reprising a role that they love from their childhood. I read an article recently about the movie I'm going to talk about today, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Peyton Reed, the director, he tried to get Rick Moranis to be in the Ant-Man movies, cameo, obviously, for the purposes of he started the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movies, and Ant-Man's all about shrinking, and it would have been fun and whatnot. And I would love to see Rick Moranis do literally anything. I mean, he's been gone for so long. He still does voice work here and there, but he's been off the screen for a while. But he's going to do a reprise of the SCTV with Martin Scorsese. I guess he's going to be part of that reunion, the old Canadian comedy troupe. So that could be fun. Miss Dan Aykroyd. Oh, Dan Aykroyd. Sorry, another Ghostbuster character actor, but no, I'm sorry. Rick Moranis, I would really love to see rejoin the fold at some capacity. We miss you. Please come back, Dark Helmet. What else happened this week? Comic-Con. San Diego Comic-Con is next week, so I think we're going to have a lot to talk about. I'll do an episode. Maybe I'll have a guest host this time. My life's been turned upside down like the Fresh Prince lately. I've just been doing a lot of renovations to the patio back at home, but any reminders, anything else? J.B. Smoove has been cast in the Spider-Man Homecoming sequel, Spider-Man Far From Home. I have no idea what J.B. Smoove could be playing in the Spider-Man universe, but he's a funny dude, and I'd really love to see the banter between him and Peter Parker, so I think that could be a lot of fun. Was there anything else? I guess they're doing a reboot of Child's Play. Is that necessary? No. They still make Child's Play movies. They still make Chucky movies like every year. They're like direct to DVD shit. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you could reinvent that franchise to make it more interesting. But of course, it's going to be a cash grab. And I'm sure people will go out to see it just for the opportunity to see like a more nuanced, new take on Chucky. Which I mean, I don't know. It'll happen. I would assume it would be good, but the Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street remakes from the late early 2000s, they didn't do very well. So I guess it's not a foolproof plan. I guess it is entirely possible to fail. So this is kind of interesting. So we know that I talked about the new DC Universe streaming application last week, and obviously Disney has a new Netflix competitor coming down the pipeline next year. But an interesting tidbit that came out this week is a director that I greatly admire, one Nicholas Winding Refn, aka the director of my all-time favorite movie Drive, is starting his own subscription service, but it's free. Okay, so for one, it's free, and the idea behind the subscription service is he will be playing very old, or not necessarily old, but he's going to be playing cult classics on this streaming service that he has the rights to, and he's going to play them. He's going to have video essays to go along with it. And it seems like a really cool idea for people who are really into film and want to check out the mind of a very interesting man. His movies are kind of hit and miss, but Drive is my all-time favorite. That's my jam, man. That's a great movie. I could talk for hours and hours about that movie. It's great. Only God Forgives, I'm not a big fan of that movie. Valhalla Rising was interesting. Bronson is really good, of course. Pretty much made Tom Hardy's career. Check out Bronson if you haven't seen it. Definitely watch Drive if you haven't seen it. And I don't know. If you're listening to this podcast and you haven't seen Drive, then I don't know. So that's an interesting idea. So we'll check it out. I wouldn't expect too much from it, but it's a fun concept and you don't have to pay money for it. So there's nothing wrong with checking it out. That website is going to be called NWR. By NWR is the complicated website domain that you can go and check out the man himself's streaming service. So we'll see that in coming days. So let's talk about Ant-Man and the Wasp. Finally, the MCU is introducing my favorite female Avenger into the fold, the Wasp. And she was teased in the first Ant-Man movie, but she didn't really get an opportunity to actually do anything. Like in the end credits scene, she got to see the suit that Hank Pym had been making for her, and that's just basically it. And then this is the debut where we actually get to see her in action, and the Wasp is dope. Okay, in action form, she's great. She's just what you'd expect. I don't really like the interpretation that just off the bat. This is coming over from the first film. Evangeline Lilly's performance. I don't know. I like her a lot. I met her briefly once at San Diego Comic-Con about 4 years ago. She's a very nice lady. This interpretation is a little bit too serious for me, but I get in a film that's basically a comedy superhero film. I mean, you got Paul Rudd as a star. So I get that they need more serious or straight-laced people to surround the comedy with, but I don't know. I think they should let Wasp have a little bit more fun. She's great in action here. Another thing about why they fixed her hair, she had a terrible wig that they tried to make her look comic accurate in the last movie. I hated it so much. Every time she was on screen, I just could not look at her. Her hair looked so ridiculous. She looked like Mia in Pulp Fiction, essentially. And they fixed that in this movie. She's got her actual hair, and she wears a ponytail underneath the helmet, and it gets nice and messy, and it doesn't look clean, and I think that was a really cool move on the behalf of this film. So kudos on the visual aspect of Wasp. That was good. I don't really have a whole lot to say about the movie itself. I mean, the first one was okay. It was okay. Like Hank and Scott Lang. I'm sorry, Hank Pym and Scott Lang were very interesting. I had a good time with their half of the film, and Michael Pena another person I've met before. He's a great dude, and I love Michael Pena, and he's really funny in these movies. He gets to be the comedic relief for both of the films, and so he's got another sizable role in this one. So I'm glad that they were able to reinstate that supporting cast. But anyways, so the first movie I thought was very formulaic. It was a very boring villain, the Yellow Jacket, played by Corey Stoll. It was essentially the exact same plot as the original Iron Man with Obadiah Stane. It was pretty much the exact same thing. Not interesting at all. And then director Peyton Reed actually recently talked about that, and he didn't even like Yellow Jacket as well. He thought he was kind of lame, and he directed that movie. And the reason being is, of course, legendarily, the great Edgar Wright spent 10 years trying to get Ant-Man made as a film, and Marvel Studios just couldn't mesh with him, I guess, when it came time to brass tacks to film the film, and I don't know, they didn't like his style. The way that Edgar Wright described it is that Edgar Wright wanted to make a Marvel film, but Marvel didn't want to make an Edgar Wright film. And this studio, film by committee thing, and I get that, like, critically speaking, like, Marvel's, like, untouchable in the critique level. Like, nobody will say a bad thing about Marvel films. I do all the time, but that's just because I'm a salty DC fan. But, no doubt Marvel makes really good quality films, but I'm just tired of the dick riding, man. Like, this Ant-Man series in particular, it's okay. It's nothing great. It's not, like, it's not mind-bendingly good. I'm sorry, I'm getting off on tangents here, but yeah, it broke my heart when Marvel and Edgar Wright couldn't agree, and I'm sure that a lot of Edgar Wright is in that first film as far as like ideas go, but you just can't match that man in style, and so I'm sure we would have gotten something really, really special if he'd have gotten to make the film that he wanted to make, because the dude's batting 1,000. He's just never made anything that wasn't brilliant in every sense of the word. So I'll forever be salty about Edgar Wright's Ant-Man not coming to fruition. But we're here to talk about the sequel. And like I said, I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. I mean, in typical fashion, I ended up falling asleep a few times in the third act. That has no bearing on if a film is good or bad or not. I mean, I do it quite often. I'm just a sleepy dude when I'm watching movies on premiere nights. And I usually see them very quickly again just to see what I missed. But I just dozed a few times during the third act of the film, but I got the gist of things. The villain this time around is better than Yellow Jacket. It's not as formulaic, if you will, but I don't know. I still kind of thought it was lame. It was Ghost in this one, she's like really cool. She's like, she can ghost through things. It's interesting. She's got a good visual look to her, and the action is really top notch in this film, but the plot just wasn't there for me. The villain aspect of it with Ghost I thought was pretty lame, and I won't get into spoilers on how she's connected to the overall plot. And I'm not going to do spoilers in this one. Honestly, I watched the movie less than a week ago, and I've already significantly forgotten most of the plot. And I don't know. It's a fine movie. It's a fun movie. Definitely check it out. If you like Ant-Man, you like the Marvel movies, watch it. Ultimately, I do think this film is going to end up being important in the MCU timeline going into Avengers 4. I do think that Scott Lang's Ant-Man will do something. I'll talk a little bit about that later. That's slightly spoilery, so I'll wait till later to talk about that. So these Ant-Man movies, more comedy-based. The plot this time around, apparently Scott, when he joined Captain America's team in Civil War with Ant-Man, I guess he pissed off Hank and Hope, and they're no longer on speaking terms, and Scott Lang has been on house arrest for 2 years, and he's started a business with Michael Pena's character. I don't remember his name, but with his and T.I. and all those guys, his gang buddy from the first movie. They've got a security business together. So Scott's been working from home, living the life in house arrest, seeing his daughter. He's got a good relationship with his daughter now, and his ex-wife and her new husband. They're Judy Greer and Bobby Cannavale. Yeah, So he's good friends with them now. That whole situation is good. It's a little over the top. I mean, those characters make very little appearances in this movie, but it's a little over the top how much they, particularly with Bobby Cannavale, how much they make him like love Scott now, and they were like mortal enemies in the first one. So this time around, so Hank and Hope are mad at Scott, and Scott has this dream about Hope's mother, Janet, the one who we'd seen in the first film, had been sucked into the quantum realm and never to be seen again. And in the climax of the first Ant-Man movie, we saw Scott shrink down into the quantum realm, but he was able to bring himself back up to the real world. So with that in mind, Hank and Hope have been working on a way to get back into the quantum realm and try and see if Hank's wife, Janet, is still alive, / Hope's mother. And they want to go save him. But they've had a strained relationship with Scott, and they're not talking anymore. Scott has this dream about being in the quantum realm and seeing Janet Van Dyne in there. And he calls on this emergency phone to Hank, and then from there, that's when they kind of meet up again, and we get into the whole spiel of the thing. And you know what's going to happen. I mean, you've seen the trailers. I don't need to spoil what's going to happen for you. You already know what's going to happen in this movie before you see it. There's not a lot of surprises. I touched a little bit on Ghost, and she has a connection to another character in the movie. Yeah, I didn't really. Thematically speaking, I didn't think that there was much to that plot line of the story. There's another villain in the movie, Walton Goggins, of course, of Justified and Hateful Eight fame, and just all around just typecast as shit villain, dude. I mean, he's great at it. He's very good at it, but yeah, dude's a douche, and he's good at playing douche. He seems like a cool guy, but he's very good at playing villain. And so he's kind of playing the same thing he's always played in this movie. There are theories that he might be connected to other important villains that have yet to be seen in the MCU. Spoiler alert, it's a Spider-Man villain. I don't think that's true. I think that's just internet gossip, just digging into things that aren't actually there. A subject I'll touch on a little bit more later on in this episode. But the movie overall it's fairly entertaining. It's nothing special, you know. It's a fun Marvel movie. I'd get more into it, you know, going into detail, but like I said before, I legitimately have forgotten a good portion of this movie, so I didn't do my research. I'm kind of doing this podcast on the fly here in between takes. So, if you enjoyed the first Ant-Man, you'll find this one fun. I don't know. I think it's kind of a throwaway movie. Will I ever watch it again? Probably not. But it's there, and I enjoy all the Marvel movies. I mean, even the quote-unquote bad ones, I still have fun with. So, I mean, I'm always down for more Marvel movies. I'll check them out, but they're not God-tier films, is all I'm trying to say. We don't need to dick ride them anymore. They've got plenty of money and success. I don't know if they'll make more of these movies or not. I'm sure it'll be financially viable. It's just like, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot in the well. It seems like the importance of Ant-Man seems to be that he will have a lot of importance in the Avengers, which, why don't we go ahead and get in on that? So, spoilers here. The only thing I'm gonna spoil about the movie right now is the mid-credit scene. After the film, of course, Marvel always has their quote-unquote tags that they put at the end of the movie, and there's two in this one. The one at the end of the credits is horrible, do not waste your time. I hate it when that happens. I love just to throw back to the Spider-Man Homecoming, that was wonderful when they had Steve Rogers in the very old Captain America suit doing the high school like PSA videos, and he's just like, so wasted your time. I love that. That was probably my favorite post-credit scene. So, spoilers for the post-credits here of Ant-Man and the Wasp. I'm going to get into it right now, and it's also going to segue into my last subject of this episode. So, mid-credit scene, there was a lab in the movie that had been that Hank Pym no longer has, so they have like a wheeling bus of... Sorry, I was rambling so long there, I kind of lost communications there. So we're back, and as I was saying, so they have a lab on top of a building that's built inside of a van. And just making sure, again, we're doing full spoilers here. So at this point, the Van Dynes and Pyms have been reunited. Janet is out of the quantum realm, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, Catwoman fame. Shout out Tim Burton, Batman Returns. Great film. I don't care what anybody says. It's got a lot of fun to it. Anyway, they're doing some research going into the quantum realm, and I just want to say for the record, long before I saw this movie, I was like, I guarantee you, I know what's going to happen in the mid-credit scene, and I was 100% right. Exactly what I thought was going to happen in a slightly different way, but I knew what would ultimately happen was what I should say. And what happens is they have this mobile lab. And they have Scott in the Ant-Man suit. He shrinks down and he goes into the quantum realm through this portal they have in the back of the van. And he's in the quantum realm. He's collecting samples. And then Scott's telecommunications go out. And he's trying to get back to the real world. He's like, how do I get back? And none of the team is answering. And you go back. And Hope and Janet and Hank have all decimated into dust from Thanos' snap. So now you know that Scott was busy. He was on house arrest initially, and then he ended up doing his own thing during the events of Avengers Infinity War. But it's still, now that I think about it, why are they fucking around with the quantum realm on the rooftop? They had to have seen the news. They had to have known about this Thanos attack. You've got shit going on in Wakanda, which has been opened up to the world now, and your buddy Steven shit is out there. You saw that there was a massive attack in New York City once again that happened at the beginning of Infinity War. So now I'm thinking, what's going on with these guys, morally speaking? Shouldn't Scott know about this stuff? That's neither here or there. That's just something that just sprung to my mind when I started talking about this. But, it could be a plot hole. But we'll see, because it seems like with this closing credit scene that maybe Scott will play a very integral role in saving the day in whatever the sequel is to Avengers Infinity War next year. Scott's in the quantum realm as we speak right now, and maybe that will somehow tie into saving the world in some way from the infamous snap. Oh. For those who are listening and not watching, I have the really dope Collector's Series Thanos glove. I'm putting it on for the camera right now. So, if you're listening, you want to, go follow us on YouTube. YouTube.com/intellectual tea party. Got the really, really cool sideshow collectible Infinity Gauntlet. Anyway, so I'll wear that for the rest of this podcast. Continuing onward, so Scott's stuck in the quantum realm. Maybe that will somehow, somebody's got to bring him out, and God knows when we'll see a sequel to Ant-Man, if we will. So there's got to be an answer to him being trapped in that realm, and it's definitely going to happen in the next Avengers. I'm sure of it. And so, honest to God, it's probably the best closing credits scene we've seen in quite some time. It was exactly what I anticipated it to be. I didn't expect Scott to be locked in the quantum realm, but I knew that some characters were going to get decimated to dust. So that was expected, and it did happen. But it happened in a cool way, and a point that it's actually a credit scene that matters. It's like something happened that will come in the next film, in Avengers 4. It's Avengers 4, but I call it 5 because Civil War is pretty much an Avengers movie. Anyway, so that was a really good closing tag screen. So I was impressed by that, and I think that we'll get something. It definitely worked like gangbusters on the audience, man. Everybody's freaking out when you pan back and just saw the crispy ash fall into the ground. You knew it was happening. So I thought that was really cool. Anyway, segueing from that, there's also, you see Stan Lee in the tag scene. He has he just says it. You see the Stan Lee cameo, and he has this joke where he just makes a reference to I'm sorry, I don't remember the quote, but he makes a reference to he sees something nuts with the Ant-Man shrinking, that he's like, oh wow, I can't. Fuck. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know I don't remember the joke, but Stanley he makes reference to losing his mind from like doing drugs in the 60s and 70s, where he's like, "Oh, my mind is catching up from all that shit I did back in the 70s." It was very funny. Audience enjoyed it, and I'm seeing articles now segueing into this clickbait generation. I saw an article on comicbook.com, I believe, 2 nights ago, and they were talking about how messed up the Stan Lee cameo was, and how sad it was, and how un-PC it was to have Stan Lee make a joke about his memory, which was obviously a joke referencing the times of the 60s and 70s. It has nothing to do with the bearing of him being 95 years old and possibly going through dementia or Alzheimer's or something like that. Everybody knows that Stan Lee, God bless his soul, is going through some health deterioration. His wife just died last year, and that's a big thing for someone of his age. I mean, you will go through that physical and mental transformation after having someone so detrimental to your life being taken away from you at that age. So he's 95. He's going through a lot of legal issues, a lot of health issues. We probably won't have him very much longer, and it's sad, but I mean, he lived a great life, and that's cool. Don't try to turn this scene into some political thing where it's like, how could they do something so insensitive? If Stan Lee had a problem with it, he wouldn't have done it. And besides the fact, it's a fun joke that nobody was offended at. The only reason that you're digging into it is because you're digging to find something to complain about, and that is unfortunately what's happened to the entire world. I'm a very liberal dude myself, okay? Don't get me wrong. And I do view things from devil's advocate point of view, and I can definitely see how people can get offended in many situations. In this particular one, I do not think it is, and I just think the world has just gotten overblown with the level of PC that's going on, and it's just gotten out of hand. That, coupled in with the terrorism of clickbait articles. So I go through this article and find out that that's what they're talking about. They're talking about Stan Lee's cameo, and it's disrespectful and it's hurtful because he made a joke about him doing drugs back in the day, and it's now catching up to him because he's seeing psychedelic shit happening. It's just ludicrous stuff. Chris Ludicrous Bridges. But I mean, on the continuing onward, and then it's like this morning I see an article from Screen Rant, and it's like Henry Cavill in interview is confirming when we'll see the next Superman film. And I click on the article and I'm reading through it. I'm like, oh, okay, this will be interesting. Because whenever I click on a publication's thing, I read the whole thing, so I get the whole story. In this day and age, this political environment where, you know, the media is being constantly attacked by the President of the United States, you know, legitimate news sources are getting shit on by a moron that has, you know, all the power in the world. And I know that most intelligent people do not take that seriously. And yes, there is a fake news problem out there. Obviously, it's not being done by legitimate sources that the president attacks. I'm not going to get into that. I'm sorry. I'm getting off topic here. But the principle is that there are good publications, there are bad publications. And I know I'm talking about entertainment media right now, but you should have a sense of pride in a sense of knowing what's right and wrong. And these articles are jokes. So I go to this source from Screen Rant. They're talking about, the article is just like, oh, you'll find out when the next Superman solo movie comes out, straight from Henry Cavill. And I'm reading like 2 pages worth of dialect talking up, and it's like, all right, and then he drops the bomb. Henry Cavill says you'll get it sometime between 2019 and 2045. So Henry Cavill had a joke there, and it was just joking about, yeah, you'll see the next Superman movie sometime in the next 50 years. That's obviously very humorous. That's fine. He can't answer those questions, so it's a nice dodge. That's fine. I accept that. That's cool. But then when these idiotic publications take that, disguise the answer, and try to put that out as news, and then people fall for it, it's just complete bullshit, and I'm just tired of it. And that's not Henry Cavill's fault. He didn't ask him to make this article about a fucking joke that he told and try to just to trick people into clicking them. And I understand the reason, the history of clickbaiting is the fact that we've gotten to this point because people do not pay for their publications. People are not subscribing to the Washington Post or the Boston Globe and shit. I mean, they do, but people don't have newspapers, and they don't want to pay for subscription services for an online website. You know, it is an interesting thing. There's great content, Hollywood Reporter, all that good stuff. all these publications are top notch, but they do charge you to be able to read their articles, and that's fair because they're doing real journalism. They're doing their research, they're doing their homework, and that's why you need to pay for good news sources. But these fake ones like this, Screen Rant, comicbook.com, all this shit, I'm tired of it. So I am that asshole that you'll go and you'll be on Facebook and you see those articles. Click the comment section is all I'm saying. Is check the comments before you take the time and give that vendor a click, because they're getting money based off these clicks, and they think they're wanting to give you more content like it works. Check the comments before you read these things. See what's actually going on before you A, waste your time reading several page articles about this shit, and B, giving them money essentially for lazy work that isn't actual news. So I am always that asshole that will comment on it, just calling it out if it's something fake. So just do the best you can to avoid that, because those people should not be rewarded for that. Not to say that they don't have some good publications here and there. They got some good news breaking, important stuff. So, you can follow those pages, but before you read these articles, make sure you know what you're getting into beforehand, because that's the day and age that we're at here in 2018. It's already been an insane year. We'll see what happens in the second half. But let us not fall for the grasp of clickbait articles. Let them die with a snap of a finger. Thank you guys so much for enjoying this weird rant of a podcast today, where I didn't really have a structure and I'm just kind of winging it, but I'm having fun, and I hope you enjoyed listening as well. So thank you for joining the Intellectual Tea Party podcast. This has been episode 4. See you guys very soon. See you next week, actually, after San Diego Comic-Con comes. We'll have lots of stuff to talk about. So thank you very much, and enjoy.